So
It's really so much brighter.
Great.
Yeah. All our eyes, we feel so much younger now.
I know.
No, that's true.
It's like the most amazing
It's like
thing
a 10 years
ever.
old.
Small, simple pleasures.
We have a new screen. We can see.
major props to Alan
I say,
for setting everything up.
Nice. Yeah, he's amazing, isn't he? Our maintenance person, Alan Buckingham.
Okay, we are live.
great. Okay, guys, it's 7:02.
Yes, yeah, just, I forgot to
Shut it off.
need the redundant stream there. Okay, now we're good.
Okay. It's 7:02, and I'm gonna kick off this meeting, of Old Saybrook Board of Education order. I pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible.
Wanted to start out tonight with a welcome message for the new year. So I'm just gonna read it, but I wrote up. I want to start out by wishing everybody Happy New Year, welcome back. I'd also like to recognize the time and hard work our board members give for the benefit of the education of our students. Let's not forget the support of our awesome administrators too, all as volunteers. Thank you for all that you do. I'm very excited for this new year. In a moment, we're going to introduce a new administrator, Dr. Fletcher, and we're going to say goodbye to another, Dr. Goss. Change is what we're accustomed to. In 2023, we're going to be dealing with a lot of challenges, and I know that with focus and strong teamwork, we're going to be able to meet those challenges. Again, Happy New Year, and let's get started.
Thank you.
Yeah, and without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Fletcher tonight at our board meeting. It's great to see you. Welcome. Welcome. We're very happy with the position and looking forward to working with you.
Few words, yeah. So, Curry Fletcher is an Old Saybrook resident. And that's not why you got the job though. Was one of 80 applicants for the position. And the group of candidates had many highly qualified people in it. And of the folks that we interviewed, we saw lots of talent, but clearly, Curry rose to the top. Will bring, every time you change people over, not that I'm happy to see you go away many times not, but every time you change people over, you get a new perspective, you get a new set of eyes on things and a different set of experiences. And so we are looking forward to what Curry's going to bring. I don't know, Curry, if you want to say a few words about yourself and then.
Well, first, thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited. It's been a pleasure to work with Dr. Goss and, find more out about the school as well as working with you and learning more about Old Saybrook. I'm extremely excited and anxious to begin the work and to collaborate with everyone.
And he starts on the 23rd. Yeah.
Curry, welcome.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Board of Education and as Chair of Personnel, I am so thrilled to welcome you to our team. From your very first interview, I was so impressed. And as you progressed through the process, you carried yourself with such grace and humility. I knew you were the right one for the job. I look forward to watching you achieve great things for our district, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
And now, we're gonna say goodbye to Dr. Goss. You've done so much for the school, the district. We're very happy that you found something that you're thrilled to do. It's hard to say goodbye, but we're very happy for you.
Thank you.
That you're here with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Old Saybrook will always be my professional home. So this is where I started and I will always be cheering for Old Saybrook. I through the time that I wasn't here, in between my tenure here in Old Saybrook, I always would kind of check in and watch the signs out in front of the schools and notice all the achievements and accomplishments. So I'll be cheering from Guilford.
Good luck to you.
Good luck.
Good luck. Amy?
Is it okay just to say a few words?
Absolutely.
So Amity, being as long as I've been serving on this Board of Education, which is a long time, I've always been focused on curriculum. And I would say that probably in that time, you've probably been the best curriculum coordinator that we've had, from your research to your ability to demonstrate what we need to do as school board members, as a district, to reach highest goals. So I have nothing but admiration for you, and want to thank you for all the time and effort and research and evidence-based kinds of guidance for this district, including taking a look at project-based inquiry, taking a look at many things that I believed in how many years ago, 34 years ago. But with persistence, you accomplished it. Jan, what a wonderful working relationship. We could just see, you know, how well you function together and had similar belief systems. And I think Guilford will be very, very lucky to have you. And so will the students and parents. And thank you for all you've done for Saybrook.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm gonna bring something down there for you. So for the holidays, I gave Amity 2 gifts. One was coasters to remember me by, because if you come in my office with a drink, you have to get a coaster. And if I don't feel comfortable telling you they had a coaster throughout the meeting, I'm twitching. Don't have your reason. So I got her coasters, cat coasters, good, like cat. And then the other thing I got her were these yard steaks for her yard, and they're all chickens. Because whenever we would have a disagreement about something, it's because she said, I'm free range chicken, I don't want fences. And, so I got her that. So, there'll be no way for you to forget us. And then we also, the Board of Education, so today she was given, yesterday she got flowers and saying cake and, but today the Board of Education, the executive board said, we've got to get something for Amity, and what can she remember us all by? And it has become a bit of a custom to give our 3 buildings to remember us by, and there was no way to wrap this, Amity. So that is, we hope you'll keep that in your office. I know I have stuff from my last job that is just a nice memento.
Yes.
The world you lived in for so long.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for everything.
Yes, thank you. Hey, next on our agenda is our audience of citizens. Okay, so we can way past that. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna look now at our reports for student order.
All right, so you all have a paper copy or paper handout. I assure you this will be the last time this happens. They'll be back online for 24th. But at the high school, at least, there's we're kind of in a period where there's a lot going on, but also not a lot at the same time. But to start with our clubs, rehearsal for the musical, which is Legally Blonde. From what I've heard, they're going great. Looks like it's going to be a good production. Everyone's finding their roles pretty easily, and it's moving along quickly. So that's always good to hear. Math team has an in-person qualifying meet not this Saturday, but next Saturday. And that is to go on to, it's either states or nationals for the math competition. In terms of academics, course selection for underclassmen is currently going on. And I believe the last day is the 12th, if I'm not mistaken, for course selection. NHS and Link Group hosted a PJs and Prep, which is kind of just a midterm preparation for the underclassmen. That happened yesterday. And as part of it, from what I saw, I think there were more like upperclassmen than there were underclassmen. And I think the reasons for that was there wasn't really like a lot of like advertisement about it. Like there weren't like signs or anything. It was announced on morning news a couple of times, but I think other than that, there wasn't like, it didn't really get out there. So if we were to do that again for like finals or something, I think we need to put it out there a little bit better. But for the kids who did go, I heard a lot of like productivity and like walking around all the different tables. And so I think it was generally positive for those who attended. For extracurricular things, band day is coming up, so the concert was supposed to be this Thursday, but that got moved because, a large number of our band students were also track athletes, and there's a meet that day as well. So they weren't able to do it together, and I believe I don't actually know what date it got rescheduled. 26th. Okay. And then the chorus concert with the middle school, I've heard nothing but great feedback from that. From the middle school, apparently the students there, felt very comfortable working with the high school students, which is always good to hear. Like they weren't very, they didn't feel like, I wouldn't say pressure, but they weren't, they didn't feel like imposed on by the high schoolers. Like I feel like everyone got along very well, which is good. For sports, softball meeting of interest happened last week, as well as baseball liftings. So those spring season sports have started to get on a roll now. And kind of overall, RAM support for both our girls and boys basketball teams has been off the charts. There's been a large attendance for most of the, if not all the games. Girls basketball has gotten off to an amazing start. They're 7-1 and play Morgan and East Hampton coming up. Same with boys basketball. They were undefeated as of before last Friday, and now they are 5-1. They played Portland, and that was a tough game. It came down to the final minutes. They play Morgan tonight. I believe the girls will as well, and then East Hampton next as well. Track and field has had multiple meets since we last met. And I've heard nothing but good things. They already have a number of athletes that have qualified for states, or shorelines and states, which is pretty cool. Any questions?
One thing I think we're going to talk about the lunches and breakfast.
Oh, sorry about that. So I made a new other category just for random things. But as you all know, lunches and breakfast are now. You have to pay for them as of the 3rd. And from what I saw, this was just, don't take this with a grain of salt. This is just from my perspective.
No pun intended.
And I'd say in the first like 2 or 3 days after you needed to pay for them, like everyone was mad. They're like, hey, like who doesn't like free lunch or breakfast or anything? Like you don't have to pay. Everyone had like a general distaste, but I honestly feel like after that, like
I see what you did there.
I honestly feel like after that, everyone just kind of like forgot about it. So I think that's all fine now. It kind of went back to how it was before. Like no one's really saying anything. I don't know. It's like short-term memory kind of thing.
Any other questions for our board rep?
One other question, I'm sorry, I must have missed the concert. So did the high school do a concert with the middle school?
Oh, yeah, for band, there is, we did one for chorus, which went really well. And then this band one that got rescheduled. We do with the middle school band, I believe, and it's like a collaborative kind of thing. So we all contribute to one piece and we play it, sort of like we did with that. If any of you were at the chorus concert, we sang one piece at the end of the concert with the middle schoolers. It's that same way with band, like each band has their own performance, and then at the end, or I'm not sure if it's at the end, but we all collaborate for one. And I think it's a Jurassic Park song, which is pretty cool.
Good way to sort of have students like step up to the high school and
Yeah,
there's a
it's cool.
collaboration.
Yeah, they get
Looking
familiarized
forward
with what they're interested in, which I think is a really good idea.
Great report. Thanks so much.
Any other questions for John? Great, thank you. On correspondence,
There was no correspondence this week.
okay. Moving on.
Yeah.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is our consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
Motion to approve.
Leanne, second.
Point of
Steve?
order. Prior to us doing that, I'd like to ask that the following 2 policies get removed from the consent agenda. That's the Series 4000 reports of suspected abuse and neglect of children, or reports of sexual assault of students by school employees. And Series 5000 student attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism.
Okay, Chair, I had a question on the consent agenda. When you remove an item like this, which is discussed later,
That's the same question, you know, discuss it after we approve the remaining.
It gets placed on the agenda as a.
Yeah, it's still on the agenda.
Okay, so I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, less those two items which Steve just mentioned.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
So you need to be able to.
Yes. Okay, now, based on that, in order to move this to the agenda, we need two-thirds votes.
Not for Robert's rule of order.
No,
It's
I'm Trevor, so you as the chair can either decide to do that discussion immediately now, or you can add it to the end of the regular agenda. But there's no vote required to, so they're already posted as part of the agenda for discussion.
Okay, I think we should discuss this right now. Okay, let's look at the series 4,000 reports of affected abuse.
The Trent, if it's online, you just go to your subcommittees
Yes,
and then you'll find it.
yep, so subcommittees and then it's policy to be approved.
So go there in case anybody's trying to find it.
Open that Word document in its final form. Or I guess not its final form, as its final presentation before we
Okay,
amend it.
so on 4,000, it's right at the top, and then 5,000, it's actually the one, second to the bottom.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
So I'd like to make a motion that we send it back to the subcommittee for further discussion and review.
Based on.
Based on several changes I'd like to see where the addition of contacting the local police department is added.
Is this a legal requirement?
Is it policy?
Yeah, because a lot of our policies are
Yes,
required by law, so I just want to be clear that
Yeah.
if we're bringing something back for discussion, that we can actually change anything.
So, the question of whether or not we call the police is an interesting debate.
Okay.
In some cases, you absolutely call the police, and in some cases, in all cases, you call DCF. DCF is a requirement of our certification to have to call. The DCF, at times, although I have seen less of it in Old Saybrook, doesn't like it when we call the police because they don't want the police conducting the investigation before they do it. I think that, as I said, it really has varied widely in different places where I've worked. But we are required to always call DCF, and sometimes we also call the police.
Okay.
That's our practice.
Okay.
And that's what DCF wants us to do, is always call them, sometimes call the police. Sometimes they'll say to us, you call the police too.
Okay.
And that was my question, is they will give you guidance on when and if, or how does that work?
They're very careful not to
Yeah.
tell us not to, because they don't want to get into a department to department
Right.
issue. But they will chastise us
If you
if they
did.
feel the police stepped on their investigation. That has not happened while I've been here. We've not been chastised when we've done both. But I have had it happen in
Right.
other districts.
Procedurally, we do need a second to.
Oh, we didn't have a second, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
My question, just a question, just as the chairperson of the policy committee. So if this is in question, we can always bring this back to the policy committee.
Yeah.
And we can look at it and see if you should be there when we meet, and we'll have that discussion and we'll have it more open, so we don't take this evening's time to to address that particular issue. I think that just makes.
Which
better
point of order is what I recommended, that we would send the policy back to the subcommittee for further review.
Yeah, but I like
Discussion
it.
at that time.
And so maybe you can be there at that meeting, because that will give you an opportunity to have greater voice in terms of what you're thinking, and then we'll have the.
We have to be careful with that, because we already have
Yes.
almost a quorum on policy.
Oh,
committee.
okay.
So,
So then, okay,
all right,
Well,
but what we
I can
can
submit my concerns in writing.
But I think we understand them. And, I can also call the board attorney and ask them, if there is no impediment to adding that, should we be adding that? I'll let her
In
wait.
my review of the state statute, there is no.
Okay, I'll let her weigh in on it. It could very well be that there's a debate between more than one department and a sense of who belongs and
who has ownership over a situation. I know if our certification requires us to call DCF, our state certifications. And so that's what we've always done. Sometimes we call it this. So we'll take it back to the committee after I get a chance to talk to the board attorney. Try to get her
And
thoughts.
this, and Steve will talk about it, because I think there isn't a forum, then whatever, we'll figure out, so you'll be able to have as much voice as you need to have, and we'll look at it collaboratively, which is great, thanks so much.
In terms of the second item, the series 5,000 student, truancy.
That one, it is on page 13. Well, we gotta,
We
yeah,
didn't vote on it.
Motion.
Oh, we have to vote on the motion.
the first one, to send it back to subcommittee.
Yeah,
Okay, I need a motion, send back.
motion to send back to the, we already have the
We
motion.
have the motion in
Second.
a second, we just need a vote.
Oh,
for
okay.
this one.
Call for a vote to, send it back to the subcommittee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
Alan, it looks like did you abstain, Alan? I'm sorry.
Keep going.
Yeah, I see your hand. Is that an abstention?
He's muted. Maybe he's sick, he's some laryngitis.
No, he's.
Sorry, I have bad sound quality. I voted in favor of bringing it back.
Okay.
Favor.
All right.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
That was unanimous then.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, so
we're looking at Steve, because
So I'd like to make a motion that the Series 5,000 student attendance truancy and that policy be sent back to subcommittee for further review in regards to page 13, I1C, where it references state general statute 17A-22R, and there is currently no state statute of that number. I would see that the council review that policy and provide us with the accurate state statute that is being referenced.
may I have a second?
second.
Second by Brianna. Let's vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? No, got one opposed. Abstentions? So moved.
That's a question, so I'm on 13, you can just repeat where you're saying 13,
Page 13,
yep,
I,
under chronic absenteeism.
Yeah.
I1C.
Okay.
Alan, I'm sorry. It might just be because you're on a bit of a delay. Were you opposed to that motion?
We'll just bring it back.
I voted in favor as well, Trent.
Okay, I think you're like a second behind. me. All right.
No, okay.
It's all good. I just want to make sure. Alan's not like rise later.
He said.
Would you mind just sending me the text for the exact motion, just so I can get it right?
Yes.
So then, the next item on our agenda are, education issues for discussion. And we are looking to, talk about the next generation accountability index presentation.
Yeah, so, Dr. Ross is gonna do her last week presentation here tonight, and it's a lot of really good news. I know we have big presentations on the agenda tonight, and so maybe we can hold questions. Would that work best for everybody? I don't know, just so we can get through these. And maybe keep comments. I don't want to stifle anybody's creativity, but keep comments limited so we can be awake for the other presentations, which are also important. And I can't make it,
Well. The electricity.
Yeah, there are plenty. Thank you. You don't want to see all the numbers.
and Corinne, there'll be a quiz after.
I have to say, I'm a little bit delighted that these numbers came out early this year. Sometimes they don't come out until the end of January. And I was very excited at the end of December when they came out because I wanted to be able to dive into them. Because when we saw our results last summer, I remember saying to Superintendent Ferruccio, I'm really sure that our next generation accountability index will be strong this year. And so to get to finish by seeing those results come in is very, very exciting to me.
I told her it's a walk-off home.
I had to look it up, but once I found out what happened. So, we will look at, Trent, if you could just go to the next slide, please.
It's trying.
Oh, there we go.
Having one of those nights. So the Next Generation Accountability Index, to me, is even more exciting than our usual scores, because this is a much more holistic look at how we're doing as a school system. It looks at academic achievement and academic growth, which we don't always see. It looks at college and career readiness. It looks at arts access and physical education. It really is a much broader look at how we're doing as a school system and what we're able to provide to our students. So this index is sort of the culmination of all of the other indices that the state does, all of the data that they collect through our standardized measures. And of course, our connections to the strategic plan.
Next slide.
This, the Next Generation Accountability Index really does connect to all three of them because it is so holistic, but of course it's focused on academics. So high quality instruction is the primary goal that we're connected to tonight. And now comes the reason that I handed out all this paper, because there are a lot of tables with a lot of little numbers. This first slide is the overall percentage of points earned by Old Saybrook students in 21-22. It's important to note that these numbers are the percentage of points earned. So the state sets a goal for us that tells us how many points we need to earn in each category. And then this number tells what percentage of those points we earned. So for instance, if you look at the second from the bottom, the arts access. Well, we have excellent arts access here. Not 100% of our students chose to access the arts at our high school level. So it was that we achieved 100% of the possible points available to us in that situation. The next slide will show you the next piece of data. Will show you what we look like in 2018-19 as compared to 2021-2022. So you will see the pre-pandemic numbers, which was the last time the accountability index was published, as compared to last year's numbers. And I color coded the changes there so that you'd be able to see. There are the lighter red are a small change, the darker red are greater change. Green obviously is a positive change, and then there are the yellows that are no change. And you'll notice all of the yellows that are no change were already earning 100% of the points. So that's, to me, those are green, but I wanted to be really transparent in how I was coding this and show it really is no change. It is interesting to note that we have a unique situation here in Old Saybrook in that in 18-19, we had such strong results that the state actually called Jan and said, what are you doing in Old Saybrook? Your Next Generation Accountability Index looks so good. So it's challenging to compare post-pandemic results to pre-pandemic, sort of our highest ever achievement. But it is still important to do because we need to know where our students are performing compared to that. So I did, next slide, please. So I did look at 2017-18, which was a much more middle of the road typical year. And I always think of Dr. Chang in my head when I think about trends in data. And so when I looked at the trend, 17-18 was really sort of right on our overall trend over time. And that sort of makes that a typical year. And so if you look across that data, I did a visual for you to make it a little bit easier. If you switch to the next page where we can see the bar chart, you can see that the blue lines, the blue bars are 17-18, then 18-19 are red, and then 21-22 are yellow. You will notice that progress toward English proficiency and growth in progress toward English proficiency, so that's the oral, the literacy proficiency scores, were not recorded in 17-18. They were something that was not part of the index at that point in time. So those are additions since then. That's not that we didn't submit data or that we didn't have it. It's that that wasn't something that they were measuring at that point. And you'll notice that the same thing is true with the Science Performance Index, both the growth and the achievement, because that was still a very new test at the time. And so that was the pilot year for that test, and they did not include that in the accountability index at that time. But I think generally speaking, you will notice that we performed similarly to 17-18, and in some cases better than we were performing in the past. Great. Yeah, it's exciting. Next slide, please. Our challenges, as you can see on the very first color-coded slide, chronic absenteeism is a statewide problem. And actually in Old Saybrook, it is significantly less than it is statewide. But it has increased by 15% for all students and 17% for high needs students. High needs students are classified by the state as students whose families qualify for free and reduced lunch, students with IEPs, and students learning English. So those three categories of students fall into that bucket of high needs students. And there is a discrepancy there. It's 2% more students in the high needs category, but you'll see in most districts the gap is much greater. So I am pleased to see that our gap isn't huge there, that our students, high needs students, and our students without high needs are not performing very differently in that way. English language arts growth, it was stronger than in 17-18, but it was weaker than in 18-19. And that's something that we have looked at as a district. That's something that we would like to pay attention to. It's important to note, though, that it is so strong at the elementary level that Goodwin was actually named a school of distinction for its English language arts growth. So it's, that is something that we feel like we have a handle on, we're moving in the right direction. And that is, there are some curricular changes that we've made that will impact students, and you will be able to see that over time. So you can present that next year and show how wonderful the growth has been. The percentage of students passing AP exams is decreasing as enrollment in those dual enrollment classes increases. So as we open up those classes and don't gatekeep and keep kids out of those classes, that means that fewer students are passing those AP exams because more students have access to those classes. That's actually something that the state said to expect. And as they passed that legislation that said that we needed to be creating pathways for all students to those dual enrollment courses, they did say to anticipate that initially we would see a drop in the percentage of students passing. And then obviously over time, we hope to be able to overcome that. We don't want it to stay that way. In terms of successes, there were many, and I am thrilled to say that our multilingual learners are one of our highlights here. So this is a population of students in our district that's been growing. We've paid real attention in recent years to supporting teachers in learning how to support our students learning English. And my goodness, those students did an amazing job. They really put Old Saybrook on the map. So we had oral proficiency for those students increased by more than 22%. Double digits is hard. To get over 20% is practically unheard of. Yeah. So that was absolutely delightful. And it suggests that the support that we've provided and the professional learning that you all have funded has really made a difference. It really, when teachers feel confident that they know what to do to support kids, it makes a really big difference. We also had a very high percentage of participation in the physical fitness testing. So 97% of our students participated. Our physical fitness was up just over 21%. Again, we're over 20%. And the scores, physical fitness scores across Connecticut generally declined, and ours increased by 21%. So excellent leadership on the part of those teachers. And Brendan, I think you had a big part in that because this is your long-term work.
Thank you.
So good to see that work pay off. Our academic achievement, as you could see in the charts, is similar to pre-pandemic averages, and our growth is greater. So that suggests that not only are we in a similar place to where we were before the pandemic, but we're growing faster than we were before. So hopefully in coming years, Dr. Fletcher will be here to present wonderful news to you about how well our students have continued to grow, and the achievement levels will be rising as well. Our accountability index ranks 15th in the state, and that includes all districts.
Amazing.
Right? So that was pretty good news for us. We
So
were
our
pretty
all-time high was
pleased.
9th in the state, right?
Yes.
And that fantastic 18-19 year, then the pandemic,
And now we're back to 15. So to me, it's an amazing story of recovery.
Right, that's
Recovery.
what a rebound. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and if you go all the way back to the 2006 DERG chart, which is the last time that the state created those district reference groups that told us how we look compared to socioeconomically similar districts, we rank first.
You're right.
So we are doing very well. And kudos to all the students and teachers and all of you for supporting all of that growth and all of that hard work. I just thought you might like to see, I can actually pass that out. I will collect it again, but I've got 1 through 50 here on a piece of paper. I know it's public record, but I would like to be kind to our neighbors but I do want you to be able to see how well your district has done. And there are a couple of names in there that will look familiar to you and that we have often sought to be competitive with, and I think you'll see that we're very competitive.
I saw this at Learn, this presentation. That was,
Yes.
so exciting.
So our next steps, obviously, you know, there was on that first slide where I showed you the change, it wasn't all green. So there's work to be done, and there will always be work to be done. But we will dig more deeply into those areas of challenge and create action plans for addressing them. The exciting part is we are in such a good place in this district with our instructional leadership team that the first thing that they did when they got this information was to start action planning and say, oh, I've got to bring this data back to the team, and we've got to figure out what we can do. And they really wanted to dig into the specifics of where this data came from and what it was that they could work on. And that's a big change, to be able to look at not perfect performance as something that really is not to be ashamed of, but to be learned from. That was exciting to see. They also are really good as a team at examining the bright spots. So if they recognize that there's a particular challenge, they're very good at saying, but where is that going right? Where are we doing that well? And how can we capitalize on what we already know as a district about what works and continue that work? And highlight that and share that with others so that people can copy and do those same things with their students. And also, I think it's really exciting because I think that everything that we see here shows all of the work toward the strategic plan is really coming to fruition and starting to really show in the numbers too. We know that this is a lagging indicator. We know that all these standardized tests and standardized measures are going to be the last sort of thing to come along when we're meeting the goals of our strategic plan. And I think we see clear evidence here that we are making a difference, and that strategic plan, your strategic plan, is really mattering in the lives of children. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right, thank you.
If one has any questions,
Just a quick question. I noticed in the slides that are going to be coming for the budget presentation showed our ELA population really increasing.
Yes.
Has the diversity of languages spoken, has that also increased? Because that would be greatly challenging as well, or are we?
That is actually
Steady.
plateaued around 9 or 10. Most years, we've got about 9 or 10 different languages. By far, the majority of students learning English speak Spanish at home. Portuguese and Mandarin are 2 other languages that we have a number of students speaking.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, Emily, in these types of meetings, generally, we get involved with a lot of the higher level issues. I was just wondering if you could, maybe to drill down deeper for us, what are 1 or 2 of the steps that we've taken as a district to, actual physical implementation as opposed to the higher logic that we're talking about here? What sorts of things would we want to share with other communities and districts so that they can succeed as well?
Yes, and we've actually had huge success with acceleration, and that doesn't get celebrated a lot because it's hard to explain, because people hear acceleration and they think of what we had traditionally called acceleration, which was sort of like curriculum compacting or enrichment sort of a strategy. It works in that way, but the kind of acceleration that we've been looking at since the pandemic has been making sure that all students are accessing grade level content and scaffolding to make sure that students who have some gaps because they've missed some things in the past years are able to participate at grade level. Because if you take kids out of that grade level curriculum and have them working precisely where they are at that moment, that gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we worked really hard at making sure that we are offering all students access to grade level work every day and thinking, how can we get them there? What supports do they need to be able to do that work? So this is a very trivial example. It's probably not the best example, but it's easy. It's a quick and easy one to understand. If you have a student who is ready to think about higher level multiplication and division, but they don't have fact fluency yet because it's just not something that they've developed over time. In order to give them access to the conceptual work that you're doing with higher level multiplication and division, you might give them a multiplication chart in that moment during that lesson. Work on the fact fluency piece in another setting at another time, but making sure that you are giving them access to the lesson that's grade level content in that moment. And we have seen, we've been sort of learning about acceleration and doing some things that actually fit within the acceleration framework for years without calling it that, without sort of having a name for it. We've been looking at keeping kids in classrooms with their peers. We've been looking at making sure that we are offering access at grade level for all students in all situations. And we've seen over the 7 years that I have been here, we've seen our remediation population drop from just about 140 to fewer than 40 at Goodman. And those are students who are now all successful. And so it's not that we don't offer remediation. Of course we offer remediation. There are times when that's necessary, but we first look at how can we keep kids in their grade level work because we don't want to make that gap worse. And actually it's been such strong growth here in Old Saybrook that we had some folks reach out because they wanted to talk to some of our coaches about that work.
Questions for Dr. Goss?
I just think it's amazing that we're providing accommodations as opposed to modifications.
Right.
And as an educator, to me, thank you. And I'm just so impressed with these results. And I just look forward to watching this progress.
Me too.
Kudos to the teachers and it's amazing.
Yes, yeah, it's a lot of hard work on their part.
It really
So
is,
I'm
because
so
this
delighted to
isn't
get to
easy,
share it with you.
and to see the percentages where they are. I mean, it's wonderful.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Excellent reporting as always. So question, the Old Saybrook Accountability Index, what does that mean? Does that mean that we're just celebrated for keeping all our systems organized so that we know what we need to be doing moving forward? What does that mean?
You know, the accountability index is the state's term. They are held accountable by the federal government, and this is their reporting tool. So they create this index of every district in the state because it's how they get the federal funding. They're accountable to the feds. So this index is what they created to answer to those federal guidelines. When you think about No Child Left Behind, there were specific guidelines. This is just sort of the next generation of that. This is how they report how we're doing as a state.
And the schools that are not listed here are not functioning well.
Well, there are, we have the Excel spreadsheet of all 208
Exactly.
districts, but I thought 1 through 50 was enough.
No, that's fine. I'm just curious. Yeah, but they might not have been there.
Yes, yeah, I didn't want to,
report card from the state.
right, I did not want to be perceived as embarrassing, so I thought 1 through 50 was fair.
Thank you so much, as always.
And you wanted these back.
I would appreciate them back, yes, please. I don't need all the numbers, just the district rankings.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are going to move on to our budget presentation.
Good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I have to.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, John. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Great.
Yet another big presentation. Annie, thank you so much. And, yeah, I know, I was just thinking, we really do need to get some sound bites out with the staff from all of us here at the Hill office about how proud we are. And we know there's work to be done, but of course there is.
I'd like
But
to
we're
sell
so
one
proud.
too as chair, if I have your permission.
You know, to the staff.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe the board wants to send something?
I think it's important.
Yeah. I'm trying to do too many things at once. I've lost that whole again, so it's number one. All right, so let's look at our budget presentation. I want to thank the Budget and Fiscal Committee for their work, reviewing this with us, and they reviewed it very quickly. This is kind of a one and done meeting. I think mostly because, well, the budget is carefully put together, but also because last year we got some really good feedback on the Budget and Fiscal Committee. We were able to utilize that feedback in this presentation. And really, we hope make it clear because we have multiple audiences. It's currently the superintendent's budget, and you're the first audience. And then the Board of Finance and the selectmen and the voters become our audience, PTOs, PTAs, different groups. So we need a document that makes sense. So I appreciate all the feedback that Budget and Fiscal gave us. And I'm going to start this presentation. It's going to be Julie and Pam will be taking on a lot of the number slides, but I'm going to start with the overview slides about what's in this budget. This budget reflects the largest year-over-year increase in my time here. And there are lots of reasons for that, and I outlined them in my letter in your book. We continue to be in difficult times. If you're in hiring or working anywhere where you've got to work with a budget, you're probably seeing things that are similar to what we're seeing, which is we're struggling with inflation. We're struggling with salary increases that need to keep up with the cost of living. We've had not only student absenteeism, but staff absenteeism since COVID. People are staying home when they're not sure. And quite frankly, we've encouraged them to do that. And so has the Department of Public Health, which has caused additional need for substitutes. And at a time when there were no substitutes out there, we had to increase the amount of money we're giving substitutes. We have the expenses associated with academic recovery. It looks like it was money well spent. But we do have a number of things that have become have an incredible pressure and impact on this budget. The sustained services budget, which is the budget that I asked Julie to create in October at the start of the process of budgeting, which is answering the question, if we open up the doors in Old Saybrook Public Schools in September of 23, and we don't do anything different from September of 22, what is that budget number? And that was a 5.63% increase year over year. So you can see we sharpened our pencils, we cut numbers, we cut things, we cut some capital expenses, deferred them, I should say, to bring it down to a 4.94% increase year over year. Next slide. So what we did with the money, as Amity alluded to, is we tie everything to the strategic plan. We stay focused. We don't look for the next greatest idea that comes down the pike, unless of course somebody from on high tells us we have to do something different and we have to invest money in it. So we really focus all of our requests on these three goals. And I think that the product is what we're getting, what we see in these results that Amity presented. Next slide. The work that we did towards goal one, and the live link there, if you went on the strategic plan progress, that would take you right to the website. And the point in doing that, when we're talking to the public, is we want them to understand, totally transparent. You can find everything on the website. We're not hiding anything that we're working on. And please go there and take a look at the work that's being done this year. And you'll be getting an update on that work halfway through the year. So we've had a lot of work done in this area. We have Jeremy Taylor has taken a lot of the work on 21st century skills at the high school. We've had instructional rounds in each of our schools, looking for those skills and making sure that they're being taught directly in the classroom. We have all kinds of creative teacher sharing, which becomes more and more of a necessity because you're a small district. And we want to create an environment, we're striving to create an environment where students feel like I can attain and I can grow and I can demonstrate my interests and use my voice to do that. And then formative assessments, and then the feedback that creates, and the tasks that are created by the learning that we have through those formative assessments. And for those of you who are new to this presentation, formative assessments are really just sort of, in some ways, simplified. The opposite of summative assessments. They are finding out what we need to know, what kids know now, what they need to know, and where we need to target our learning, which again helps you to accelerate things. Next one. High quality instruction. A lot of the same details. And I don't want to read all of these slides. Again, this is created for multiple audiences. Next slide is goal 3. We do have the second year of our socio-emotional coordinator. She's going to be finishing up her work this year. She's been reduced from full-time to part-time. That was paid through the grant. But she'll be exiting at the end of this year after putting a number of programs in place, which is what we really needed her to do. We needed her to respond to the concerns that were coming out of the pandemic and anxiety and depression issues, and put things in place, or help the staff put things in place that will allow us to address those issues in an ongoing, sustainable way. Next slide. Just quickly, we'll just click on each of these very quickly, Trent. We always tell everybody about our programs and what it is that we're doing, and how we are achieving in certain areas. And so this is a bit of a brag sheet. I don't know how many of you can see that. No, not me. Yeah. Back. I'm sure you can see it on your own screen, so I don't even know if this is worth doing.
Where's that little preview you can make it larger?
Yeah, and you should be able to pull this up on your own.
Yes,
slide,
I
on your
I'm
own.
looking.
Okay,
Believe it or not, with the new contrast, I can
you
read
can
it.
see that. Next one, Trent. Oh, that's easier.
Too much to brag about here.
You know, I think we need to add to this the School of Distinction.
Yeah.
Really.
On the slide.
Can they have like a movie right outside their school?
Yeah, Jim.
My question would be, Jan, what is the fry cut club?
Cricket.
Yes, I know the answer to this.
That is,
Is that the sport cricket?
No,
No, okay.
no, it's
Paper cutting.
it's the ones that make those designs.
Is that right?
It's an art craft.
Do we like origami?
What?
crafting.
Crafting, okay.
Yeah, paper crafts.
No, it's like, so her, so mug is done, you know, it makes all kinds of, cutouts, you can-
stickers,
It can be
they can
wood,
make
it can be
t-shirts and
metal,
everything.
it's called a cricket.
It's
Yeah,
a arts and
I've heard
crafts.
that before.
It's like circuit,
It's cricket.
but it's, yeah.
And it is something that was requested specially by students and staff at Goodwin.
It's actually a brand name.
Yeah.
Cricket is?
Yeah.
It's a machine.
I have a
With
cricket.
a little R.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Paper.
So the one I knew it
I was like cricket, I'm like, yeah, I'm like this.
and we want to keep the kids engaged. And then finally, extracurricular and athletics. We've got those live streaming systems up and running, which is fantastic. Obviously, we have lights on our field. We have night games, thanks to the hard work of a lot of community members. And we continue to look for cooperative opportunities to keep our sports alive. Next one. And then social emotional. We continue to work with DESA. We're getting good data out of that. We've got SEL programming in the classroom. So this is happening through responsive classroom, second step advisories at the high school and middle school, flex time, where there's just opportunity for within the setting of the classrooms, within the community, for us to
be thinking about not just the ability to academically approach education, but to be ready emotionally to approach it. Okay, and we go on to the next slide. We always have this slide, it's 2 slides actually, of what happens to our kids when they graduate. And the point of this slide is when we're talking to the public, we want them to understand, we send our kids off to lots of different types of places. Ivy Leagues, military academies, community colleges, to the military itself, gap years, out into the work world, out to technical schools. And we feel an obligation to prepare all of them for the future they envision for themselves. That means you have a pretty diverse population, more diverse than you might think, in order to get them ready. And we've had some kids go and do some really interesting things, you know, like maritime academies and just really, really impressive stuff. And it's also, I'm really pleased to see, well, we always get, and there's nothing wrong with this, a large number of kids who apply to and go to UConn, which is great. We also are starting to see some really unique colleges too, which I think speaks to maybe looking more far afield than just the typical when they're prepping for applying. And then the next one is a constant every year. What is our budget development process? And I won't read it to you. I'm sure you've read it, but please, if you have a question for me on the process, nothing really has changed. This works. This is a process that works. It includes everybody. It gets everybody's thoughts. Anybody who wants to have input can have input. Doesn't mean you're going to get what you want all the time, but you can have input and an opportunity to identify what people believe, what practitioners believe is most important for the classrooms.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So the colleges, this is class of 2022, so did these students actually get accepted to the United States Air Force or Army and the Coast Guard Academy?
They actually went there. This is just where they went, not where they applied.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It is a very big deal. Yep. Next slide. Also, when we're going through the process, we always start with a zero-based budget, meaning we don't get into the, what I call sloppy practices of saying, well, it costs this much, we've had 8% increase or 12% inflation, and, you know, plus there's this, and let's throw 15% on last year's budget. I've been places where that's how departments were budgeted, and that does not ever lead to efficient trimming. It leads to chaotic trimming, because then it leaves it to us at central office to just start locking things off. Always about fiscal responsibility. We understand that while we're under pressure from the times we find ourselves in, the economic times we find ourselves in, everyone else in town is as well. We always look at enrollment staffing projections, and in fact, this budget does have one reduction of a certified staff member. And when I have to say, when all the numbers are done, as far as high school and middle school enrollment in classes goes, we might see change there as well, an additional reduction. It's not on the radar right now. I just keep that door open, just in case something should happen. Digital platform, instruction, other resources in a changing environment. So as you know, we went 1-to-1 quickly on March 13th, 2020. We went 1-to-1, just handing laptops out. And so now we need to sustain that, because now our students are demanding it. They're used to working that way. Our teachers are used to working that way. That's the world they're going out into. And so we have to cycle through and make sure that we have laptops that are running. COVID continues to cost us money, you know, not just in PPP, it's we're PPE. Thank you, thank you. That was the table. You know, also costs us money in trying to recover academically and dealing with other issues like attendance and the cost of manufactured part. Interesting story. So we have this coil issue at Goodwin. We installed these coils, which you've all been hearing about in my emails, over Christmas break. Makes perfect sense. Anything that goes on will go wrong when no one's there. These coils are always doused in mineral oil to protect them in transport, and then sitting on a shelf. Well, because of manufacturing now, they didn't sit on a shelf. So the mineral oil is burning off for days and days and days. So we had to have them pulled out, steam clean, put back, all the filters had to be changed.
It has been an ongoing issue and bringing the stick air in to make sure it's just mineral oil, which it was. And, those are expenses, you know, these are expenses that we didn't think about 5 years ago. And that's just because so much has changed. And when I called the Connecticut River Health District to talk about the problem, I was told, oh yeah, we've been dealing with this in other places as well.
Wow.
Obviously, we always want to maintain our facilities, keep them safe and healthy. That is not something that we're ever going to shortchange. We have a new state of Connecticut requirement on our special education platform that our IEPs have to be done differently. We've actually had to bring people in to cover classes so that people could take the 4 or 5 hours that it takes them to do this. We're also talking about purchasing something to help them do this work. That's just a really frustrating situation. Teacher evaluation, so we had to put money in this coming budget because of teacher evaluation platform that we're using is no longer going to be available. And we have to try to find something, and we will be honest with you, we took the most expensive one and we put that in the budget. It was what, 18,000, because we don't really know.
You want a placeholder?
We need a placeholder, and the reason why we chose the most expensive one is we're still waiting for the state to tell us what our new teacher evaluation plan is gonna be, because remember, they kind of stopped everything during COVID and we don't have its replacement yet. So I'm very frustrated by that. And then, of course, the science of reading, which you heard me talk about ad nauseum, which nothing wrong with the legislation of the science of reading, which says that every good reading program has the 5 basic of good reading, you know, phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, comprehension. What is it? Fluency. I always forget either vocabulary or fluency. But now they're prescribing particular programs. And we're talking big money. And so there's about almost $100,000 in this budget to pilot some of those programs so that we can choose the best for our students. Because we have concerns. These are not things that we chose ourselves, and we don't really know how they were chosen. Next slide, please. Ann?
So this slide outlines some historical information as well as our information as of October of 2022 in different categories of students. So you have special education, 504, and 504 is students that do not have IEPs, but have other accommodations for instruction throughout the school day. So we also have students who are eligible for free and reduced meals. And so each one is looked at separately. So here, there's 16.24% of special students who are special education, almost 8% that have some sort of accommodation outside of an IEP, and 24% free and reduced. So there is a chance when you're looking at this, you're not going to add it all up because perhaps there is a student who is in more than one of these buckets. Since we were able to do this slide, we were able to, due to our student data person, we were able to pull our students, and if they were any of one of the 4 things, if they were special ed, a 50 with an IEP, a 504 plan, free or reduced, or an English learner, if they have any one of those 4, that accounts for 44% of our October 1, 2022 population. At least checks one of those 4 boxes. So to give you an idea of the types of students and the various needs that are addressed within the funding of this budget, that's what the slide is showing you. The next slide is specifically for English language learners, and over the past several years, you can see that these numbers of students correlate to the percentage below it, and that's the percentage of the total student population of that year. So not only are our number of students increasing, but the percentage is increasing as well because our enrollment overall is dropping. So as our total students are dropping, the number of students who are learning English rising, and therefore our number nerds like to say the percentage goes up as well.
So this is the history of this budget that we're putting in front of you this year. The sustained services budget was a 5.63% increase, or $29 million. The administrators, of course, simultaneously are out talking to their staff and making plans for their school. And their budget came in at slightly more than that, at 6.13%. That's unusual. We've never had the sustained services come in so close to the administrator's request. But we have it here. And then, so we did our work to bring it down to 4.94%. And Julie's going to go into, in the later doc screens, what has caused, specifically what has caused this, and we'll be jumping in with some of the details. I will tell you that in speaking with my colleagues, a number of them are seeing significant jumps in their budget this year. 6.7%, 5%, some less, but some had more last year. And so I'm not sure how that plays in, but we've been very lean for a long time. And we've always said to the Board of Finance, we presented it, we cannot guarantee these numbers every year. We can't always work that magic. Next slide for Julie. All right.
So here, is our 10-year budget history. And as the superintendent just said, if you look at the history over this period of time, our budgets have been relatively low. We have capitalized each year wherever we can, while still making great gains and doing the kinds of things that we talked about in the strategic plan and so forth. But this year, we're at a 4.94%, 1.356 million of an increase. But I think it's important to note that of that increase, 6.59% includes in staffing, includes some very interesting things that once again, we've incurred that aren't always predictable. For instance, $52,000 of a title grant was reduced like that. They don't tell us, we don't hear it until we apply for the grant and find out, by the way, you're getting, 50 grand less. 61,000 in loss of other grant funds, so a variety of other places. 44,000 of grant funding for the ECP program. As you recall, it was a 4-year buy-in. So, we knew that was coming, but it was coming in a small, increment. But you combine that with these other things we're talking about, and it all adds up. We had increased enrollment in early childhood. So last year, or this budget year, we had to add another classroom. So that was not part of the baseline for this budget. So that's an increase over the current year. And then we had our 3.6% increase of certified salaries, which is about $470,000. In addition to that, we have a shift, and you'll see this in the numbers, where non-certified instructional staff is reduced, but that money got shifted into the certified staff account for a BCBA position.
Behavioral specialist.
Thank you, sorry, I forget, but I gotta spell those out. And then finally, the other adjustments throughout this account, about $41,000 in staff changes, either degree changes, things of that sort that happen over the period of time. So that's what attributes to that increase this year considerably. So it's important to know those pieces to this equation. The next slide, as we look at the pie chart, we know that generally speaking, when we look at salaries and benefits over everything else in the budget, it's about, in most districts, it's about 80%. We're around 78%, 77.65. So we're actually doing quite well overall of salaries and benefits relative to the other parts of the budget, a little bit under the trend of our colleagues. So we can, again, click on any one of these and Trent, do you want to?
Sure.
Want to pick,
Those salaries.
yeah, so there you can see where the ups and downs are throughout that entire account. It gives you a little bit of a summary for each line item, and you can see where the pluses and minuses are. We have some money in summer staff for the programs that, the enrichment programs that we're going to be having again this summer. We're also, our substitutes, another area that the superintendent spoke about earlier, that we've had to pay more per day to hang on to people and to get people throughout the last couple of years.
And if I could add to that, Julie, the 3.6% increase in salary, teacher salary, that was a negotiated contract, and we felt like we did quite well. We came in below the state average
Mhm.
at at a time when nobody can find teachers. No, I mean, it is really getting to be a crisis, the teacher shortage.
We came in at 11.5 and the state average, just the settlements that had come in thus far, and they weren't all in, is 12.03. So we were over 0.5% lower.
But we have to pay people because we can't afford to lose them.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's the reality.
So benefits, if you wouldn't mind, Trent, clicking on benefits, right now, we're.
There's also, I'm sorry, there's also $50,000 in food services that.
Yes, yep, we'll get to that, yep.
Thanks.
It's in supplies, so we haven't got.
Thanks.
So benefits, there's currently we have a 5% projection, in this account for benefits. We go through a process and it'll be March or April before we settle on a number. The co-op has really, been very, very good to us. And we'll talk about that in a later slide, but, right now there's a 5% placeholder in there, currently. Tuition and transportation is pretty flat. We budget actual costs at this point in time. So as you know, sometimes we have to add a bus, sometimes we reduce a bus, sometimes we have a student move in that we have to pay tuition. It is a very up and down, fluid account. And so we take the point in time when we're building the budget, and that's what we work with. Other objects, so supplies to the superintendent's point, we ended up, this account is up significantly, and it's up there's some very significant pieces to it. $70,000 is supply money for the pilot programs that were mentioned, that we're gonna have to look at for our reading. Chromebooks are now a supply item, so we have a $40,000 line item in there for Chromebooks because they're under $300, so they're under 500 is considered
You're student
a
of tech
supply.
right now.
Yeah, it is, right? They're consumables. There's $50,000 in there for food service, because now that we did not raise food service prices, and I don't know about you, but when I go to the grocery store, prices are up on everything. So food costs are up. Again, the labor issue, we've had to keep, hourly wages for our workers at a competitive rate in order to keep people. So all of those factors combined, we're concerned about being able to sustain that program under the current, income that we're receiving from just the paying students, if you will. So there's a $50,000 placeholder in there for that as well. And then finally, we have some capital items, which we will talk about as we get closer to that slide. Again, this is a slide you're used to seeing. It's our larger budget drivers. You can see, salaries up, benefits up, tuition and transportation down a little bit, and tuition down a little bit, transportation up. They kind of almost wash each other out. So those are our main increases right there. Visually, it gives you a good comparison of where we were currently and what the increase consists of.
And that results in about 25 million.
Those two pieces, yeah. The next slide, that's the contract that we just spoke about. Those are the 3 years. You can see Old Saybrook in the green and the state in blue. And so, again, the average of our 3 years is about 11.5, and the state settlements are about 12.03. These are the staffing levels, and we're currently down 1 FTE, full-time equivalent staff member over the current year. So this is a slide that we also present to you every year. Pam presented our number, you know, our decline in enrollment, although we've been relatively steady last year to this year. And this year proposed against next year's projection. So we fall kind of in the middle, as you can see. If you look at the average daily membership, so the number of students that each town that we put up on this chart, we are second to the lowest in per pupil expenditures in that we have the second to the lowest number. We have the second to the highest per pupil because it's a direct correlation to the number of students against our budget expenditures. And you know, when you look at an Essex River Chester that has 200, is that 2,300 kids, you know, they're obviously going to have, be able to spread their expenditures over a larger
And
number.
actually, they should be on the far right and Clinton should be second, but that has a lot to do with the structure of their 3 different school
That's
districts
true.
and then their 4th school district being the secondary program.
That's true. And then this is a slide that I think is very worth mentioning. This is the collaborative that Jan and I sort of got in on the ground level. And this is the history of that collaborative. And I did a quick calculation. If we were part of the state plan, we would be looking at almost $500,000 increase in our budget and benefits this year. So because we have been a part of a collaborative with 4 other communities, we have been able to beat trend on health insurance costs. And we've been able to, in 2 years that you can see, we've actually reduced our premiums. And so I think when you can be below trend, below what the rest of the world is having happen in the world of health insurance, and stabilize your rate, so you're not looking at double-digit increases for health insurance. In these times, I think you've done a pretty good thing. So I'm pretty proud. I know Jan and I worked really hard on this committee. And it's taken us a long time to see the fruits of the labor, but I think this gives you a very good visual.
It is currently, now we're self-insured, with this collaborative, and we are currently a very healthy insurance company, basically.
And this is the slide that kind of tells you the story, the blue being the state cost for single, 2-person and family plan. And there's Old Saybrook's cost for single, 2-person and family coverage. So significantly different. And it'll be a long time before we catch up, I hope, to any of those numbers that you see up there in the blue.
And obviously, this is good for staff too, because they have a cost share and.
Yeah,
reduce it.
it's win-win for all, absolutely.
This is, Julie's gonna go through the details, but this is really the rest of the budget. So we just saw the big ticket items, people, transportation, tuition. But about 420,000 really makes up the rest of the budget roughly. And each of these are live and we can click on any of them and show you where there have been increases or decreases. Go to gasoline and diesel, if you don't mind, Trent, just for fun. Right.
So the reason that you see that decrease, which you ask yourself, why would it be going down, when things have not really been in our favor? But we're running only 2 runs for buses. So that definitely saves us on fuel. It's a third right there.
Right.
And we've also had fewer buses running. So the combination of the 2, we think, and again, it's a projection, but we hope that we're going to be able to maintain. Yeah.
Can we go to software workbook? Down to the bottom left, yeah.
So this is actually my sidekicks, right left arm right here.
So each year, we are using e-textbooks. So to discuss textbooks first. So e-textbooks, and the same as in the past, when we had traditional textbooks, you go through periods of new adoptions and new changes. And so the savings we have this year is that at this point, I do not believe we have any new adoption set to come on board. And those are generally big upfront costs. Where you do see some increases is right above it in technology and licensing. A piece of that is we are planning on a revamp of our website. And so that falls under technology and licensing. The revamp piece of it is going to be a 1-year expense, and then there's the regular annual licensing. So many things. There's a list of over close to 300 different individual licenses we track throughout the year. So that ranges from academic, it ranges from research databases, but then there's operational. There's Adobe Creative Cloud, there's our Microsoft licensing, there's our camera licensing for our security. So pretty much every piece of our daily operations has a licensing piece associated with it. Our HVAC controls all have licensing. So we have seen over the past year more, I can't even say it's more than inflation, but traditionally we would anticipate a 2.5%, maybe a 3%. We're probably seeing more 3.5%, 4% on average. So of course, some things will have no increase, where other things we might see a 10% increase. And so each and every item that has been requested, particularly academically related, has gone first through our ILT leaders, and then it comes through central office. And they have to specifically, just like zero-based budgeting, specifically request that they want a license for the following year. There is nothing that we're just like renewing, like the apps you can have on your phone, or we're going to find your subscriptions that you don't realize you have. We are intelligently, every time we have a renewal come through, make sure we're using it, make sure there's nothing that's just kind of continuing and building and not being utilized the way we want to.
Anything else you want to highlight?
Professional learning, maybe?
Sure. Makes sense.
So there's and we can speak to this as well, but there is an increase here specifically for the reading program at Goodman's. So we mentioned it was $100,000. We've already talked about $70,000 in supplies. The remaining $30,000 is just for training and getting our staff up to speed to be able to implement the prescribed program. So that is in addition to the initiatives we want to keep moving forward for the strategic plan, our 3 goals, and there's specific money set aside for each of those, as well as departmental needs for whether it be AP training as we have more teachers or different topics coming under AP. So those are the things that are going to continue moving forward and to address the reading program at Goodwin as well.
Jan, the committee, is that okay to ask a question, or do you want to wait till the end?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay,
That's fine.
so at the committee, you know that we met, budget and fiscal, I think we were talking about, maybe I asked the question about the one in terms of textbooks, there was a reduction in textbooks. And I figured that when you presented to the community, you know, old school, you're like, what do you mean reducing textbooks? But now things are being handled, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, electronically or like so there's a,
and, yep,
right.
out of one account into another. It's exactly right. Okay, thanks.
We could go back to salaries for a minute. I just want to mention one more thing.
That would have to go back to the high.
Go back to.
All right, I'll just talk about it.
It's fine.
And I presented this to budget and fiscal as well. We, we're seeing some savings in our administrative group this year. And this is the year that I would like to move the athletic director position from the teachers unit, which has always been very awkward for lots of reasons, to the administrators unit. Currently, and we're talking about him like he's not here. Brendan is working under the teacher's contract, which really doesn't allow us to utilize him to do observations and evaluations. He's a health PE teacher. He was a health PE ILT teacher, which means he has leadership training. He has his 092 certification, his administrative certification.
To me, it just seems like a waste not to move this into the administrative group, and that will allow us to have him work with health PE teachers. We've been moving Matt Walton over to Goodwin to do work, and he's traveling back and forth. This would allow us to have another administrator to slip into a position, for a period of time or whatever. Either at the middle school or Goodwin School, which won't be bad for athletics either, because they'll know him and kind of work on the Cedar program. But it ends up being, it's about a $10,000 cost over the stipend he's getting on top of his teacher's contract this year, total, like all in. We get about the same number of days, if not more, out of him without all that quote overtime stuff. And as I said, the net in the administrators group is about the same.
And so does that mean that gives Brendan the opportunity to evaluate coaches?
He already can evaluate
already do that.
coaches, but now he can also help with the evaluation of teachers, especially in an area that he knows so well.
It's like, is there an evaluation, like maybe Brendan knows certain evaluation document they have to look at for coaches?
We do, we have
You do?
a document, yeah, we updated every few years.
And those are done very well at the end of each season, and they come forward to central office for review. But this makes them a utility player.
Sports vocabulary, right?
We didn't work it into the presentation, for 2 reasons. I hadn't talked to the teachers union, but I have now. And I didn't want to put it here in the book before we had that conversation, had that opportunity. And also because we hadn't finalized the discussion with how it would work in the administrators union. Those have been very informal conversations. I don't want them to think I've been negotiating anything. And Pam and Julie worked out the numbers on what that would look like to come up with what I just told you as far as that. And then, of course, once this position is in the administrators union, then the salary increases would be in accordance with the administrator's contract and all the other benefits. Questions for me about that?
Logical, makes sense.
I'd just be curious, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd just be curious to see what the differences are between the two contracts when you get moved over.
Would you say the difference, you mean the salary differences or just everything?
Language, yeah, everything.
Yeah.
The two contracts, we're going from one contract to a different contract.
Yeah.
What those.
Yeah.
Are there any other ancillary items within those two contract changes? I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm for it. I think it's a great idea.
Thanks.
I would just like to see. I like to read them, so.
Yeah, well, they're both available on the website, both contracts. And I would say just off the top of our heads, we can probably tell you that there is I would say a donation. There is money given to administrators for 403. It's a slightly different medical.
It's slightly, the plan's a little bit different.
They're both
And
HSAs.
the cost share is maybe 1 or 2% difference, so it's nominal.
And it's a different professional development pot, or we'll say line item, where they all share a certain amount, and then whoever can use it in a particular year to go to a conference. Obviously vacation days, because there are no vacation days in a teacher's contract, they just get all school days, all non-school days off. But otherwise sick days are the same.
Life insurance would be slightly different, but we pay 17 cents per thousand, so it's
all
minimal.
insurance. And I went on the group insurance too, because that was costing the district a lot of money for me to have a separate policy.
And and the teachers union not seeking any concessions to release the position?
The informal conversations have been kind of like, this makes sense, the same thing that you're all saying. Yeah, but we're gonna formalize that. Yeah. Anyway, so it's sort of ancillary to the budget, but I wanted you to know that. I didn't want it to be a surprise to you.
I think really because you're restructuring the position, that it doesn't have to be put open for, to have other teachers apply.
You're
Restructuring his current
Right.
position.
Right.
So that's,
And taking
I
it
just
out
wanted
of that.
to, I understood that, I just wanted people to make sure that.
Yeah, I hear you.
We don't have to announce the position, we're restructuring the current position.
Right, and we could always post it internally
Mhm.
and just to cover all our bases.
Right, I'm
and
just,
be fair.
exactly, I'm just, knowing contract,
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention that.
yeah, thank you. And the next slide, which I believe is our last slide. No, second to last. Julie?
So, yeah, so this is, what we have included for capital projects in the budget, for the upcoming year. Goodwin, we anticipate after the rest of the work is done on the AC project, we'll be cutting into some of the playground, paved playground area in the back. So we're gonna wanna resurface, not repave, just coat it so that it's nice and fresh for the start of the year. We also have at the middle school, we have, if we're gonna do the Goodwin one, we try to do these in conjunction with one another. That would be the parking lot here as well as the rest of the parking lot, sealing that as well. So we do the two together. And then the high school, we have some flooring in the wood shop. That, for those of you that have been up to the high school, the wood shop was an old wood shop. It is now more of a tech ed room. It had an old parquet floor in it. We have, the floor has seen better days. It's beginning to buckle. It has some asbestos underneath, so we would like to do a removal this summer, and it'll probably remain a concrete. But wouldn't be, we wouldn't be putting another floor in. We'll just seal that concrete and use it like a real shop would be. We also have to repair the stage curtain, and we are looking to buy shot clocks, scoreboards, and paint the gym at the high school as well. We've done a beautiful job on that floor. This is sort of the second piece of rejuvenating the gym, brightening it up. I know that Brennan is beginning to work on trying to find a better method of displaying our banners and perhaps a different way to do that in general, which I'm sure the board will be part of and hear all about as we move forward. And finally, our little AC unit that sits right out here is about 25 years old. So.
That explains a lot.
You know, it's
So-
cold in here?
Yeah. No, why you and I are sweating? Oh, yeah, that's right, exactly. I agree. So, this is really being proactive. We sort of taped it together with spit and glue last year. Mice got in it, we've had all kinds of issues. And they've kept it running for us, but it certainly is in need of some work, so. So that is that.
Thank you. This is a slide that you see every year. It's rather anticlimactic after the rest of the story, but we just want the community to be aware of, how we focus our requests for resources, what our mindset is when we're going through the process of creating the budget, and how we see ourselves as an asset of this community. To be 15th in the state on our total scores, our total report card is something to be proud of, and it's something that, requires a lot of support. I wish I could stop saying this, but we continue to find ourselves in challenging times. It started with COVID, and we just, the reverberations haven't stopped. And we continue to do our very best to project our needs, but who can expect the things that we have dealt with, right? We do a lot of research. We do a lot of reading of trends and expectations to prepare this budget. And think a lot and talk a lot, like not even just during budget season, about what do we anticipate is going to be different, like we do in our homes, right? And this is the process that we go through very carefully. It takes a lot of work. I thank Pam and Julie because they're the ones who really kind of put it all together at the end. And I thank everybody, which is a lot of people in this district, who really put the information together so that it's really representative of what people feel they really need. There are two more slides here that last year we just kind of used as a, hey, would you like to know more about ARP ESSER?
And so just so you can see them, they probably make perfect sense to you because we've been talking about ARPS all along. Those are basically just grant periods when we have to have money spent by. No problem there. And the next one is, I can't see it.
The areas, the buckets in which,
so
so like the HVAC, you can see we're planning on spending 681,000 of the 1.4, almost 1.5 million goes toward air conditioning at Goodwood.
And 23, 24, 24, 25, we're always going to be seen as a bit of a cliff in the state of Connecticut, exacerbated even before COVID. A funding cliff. And it's here. A number of things are sort of hitting all at once. The good news is the state is saying that they have a surplus, we'll wait and see. And so maybe there'll be some money to put back into places where the funding is drying up, but things are definitely shifting. The legislators are meeting already, and they are making a lot of sounds about excess cost and educational cost sharing funding and making some changes perhaps to those formulas with tiered systems. So we're going to continue to see interesting things happening in those areas, and we'll be ready to respond to them as best we can.
Great, thank you, Jan. How do we all feel about the budget? Are we ready to see the motion we need to look at? The questions we need to ask? Do you want to move forward? This budget as it is?
I that we need to approve the budget as presented.
Second.
Second, any discussion?
So my discussion is actually, on Friday, what's today? She's Tuesday. CAVE had this webinar on this reading program. There were what Jane was mentioning, there were 200 participants, mostly school board members. And they really were, and they were not satisfied, interestingly enough, with the Commissioner of Education, Charlene Russell Tucker's responses. They were, the feedback started coming back to CAVE. They had asked, for people to submit questions, but the questions never were addressed or never answered by and that was really a little bit frustrating because you tried to put it in and then they had a chat and you wanted to be able to get that questions answered. So a big piece of this, but correct me if I'm wrong, but we're being put into a situation to spend money when we're doing really well as a district. So that came up as a question. And the answer was interesting, for your understanding. The response was, we're interested in the students that are making great progress, but we are putting this in place because there are a certain percentage that are not reaching a certain place in space that they need to be. And that was their focus, and that's what their drive was. They mentioned, I think I asked who initiated this in the first place. And I think they had some name, but she wasn't there due to the accident that happened, after the state capitol, but this is far from over. And I don't know if it helps us with our budget.
Representative Walker.
Yes.
Yes. We met with her today.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to meet with her today. And she is very sincere in her desire to do what's right.
Right.
And so it's our job to keep talking to her about how that can be a positive thing for all districts.
Right.
I have to say, as far as the legislators go, they did not mandate a program.
No.
That came from the State Department of Education.
So there you go. Exactly.
So the people you had in the
That's good to
room
know.
were the important people to be able to answer that question.
And I don't know if they answered it, but they wanted to answer, and it's far from over. Far from over.
So just Jen, is there any update in terms of the appeal process that's been going back and
The
forth?
waiver.
Yeah, so Amity submitted the waiver and we also submitted the 1-year delay because really it's supposed to be implementing in July.
Right.
Which is a no-go for Old Saybrook, because that's not how we do things.
Right.
We always study, try to find out what is best for our kids before we move forward. So we put in for both the waiver and the extension. Haven't heard back yet at this time, and it's been kind of silent. I'm not sure what's happening.
It's also monumental, the kind of work that this district has to put through just in county to verify just to do a waiver. I mean, it's not just, okay, we're gonna do a waiver. No,
A lot
not
of
really justify.
It was a lot of work. You had to, yeah, it's a lot of work.
Rena?
I don't know if this is the right time to ask the question, but I know that we need to present to the Board of Finance. Do you anticipate, have you thought about where they might throw up, not some roadblocks, but have some questions about
Good
the budget?
question.
Really good question. So I think there's gonna be sticker shock because they're not used to it coming forward with these kinds of numbers. And I understand that. We've been very worried about that, but as we've said to them every year, we're gonna come to you with the actual requests we need. I think they might look at the big dollars like the salaries. They might look at the cost for substitutes, perhaps professional development dollars, but these are things that can be very easily explained as to why we're increasing there. And then I think, while it's a small percentage of our budget, they're gonna see what inflation is doing to our budget as well. It's the landscape of hiring teachers, of training teachers, and of dealing with those things that seem to come at us. It is changing rapidly. That was always there, but it's changing rapidly. Old Saybrook was not a community that ever had trouble attracting teachers. And we were able to get everybody we needed this summer, but it took the whole summer. That was usually 3 or 4 weeks. And some of it was very last minute. And I think about where did those people come from? Well, most of them came from other districts, which means those districts lost their people just before school opened.
I was gonna say, Karina, you mentioned had a good question. So the part of the increase would actually be for this reading curriculum.
Yes.
So that's something they need to know that somebody didn't just put this in. The mandates that are in their, equation and how it demonstrates.
And if it doesn't go away, there'll be more money requested in
That's right, that's right.
So that's fine, that's
Right.
yeah.
Karina, question?
Don't go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, comment. Yeah, I think being a part of both the budget subcommittee and also the personnel subcommittee. As we can see, the salaries and the benefits are 78% of the entire budget. So to expect an increase in there is probably reasonable based on all the things that we consider on the personnel committee. I mean, we're not just willy-nilly giving the teachers every concession that they want, and we work very hard to keep those numbers as low as possible. But as you mentioned, inflation drives a lot of that. So I don't think, I do think the salaries are a large part of it. That's always going to be the case, and it's always going to be the case that we on the subcommittees work very hard to keep those numbers as low as possible to make it affordable for the town of Old Saybrook to accept good teachers and accept those numbers in the budget.
Thank you, Jen, for saying that.
Please, no other questions? I'm gonna call for a vote. Karen, could you read the motion, please, again?
The motion was just to approve the budget as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
You raised your eye.
Yeah.
Abstention?
Well, I want to thank you very much, and we'll go forward to the Board of Finance on the 24th prior to our board meeting. They know we have a 7 o'clock board meeting, and again, I do think we're prepared. We know that it's going to be it's a big hill, but we hope we'll be able to explain to the best of our ability. If we are asked to make cuts, we're going to have to look very, very carefully where we make those cuts, because you don't want to start that practice of chipping away at capital maintenance and all of a sudden buildings aren't in good shape. And we don't want to.
Especially because the reading program isn't one that we would be able to make a cut. So
Right.
some of the ones that are
We
mandated.
can't cut, right?
Yeah, there's big ticket items that were not allowed.
Yes, and maybe, totally transparent, maybe in the second quarter, or the end of the first quarter, even of 2023 fiscal quarter, we may see our insurance numbers improve a little bit. That would be great. That would take some of the pressure off, but we had to work with a number that we thought was reasonable.
So James, the 24th at 5:30 is in this room.
It's over at Board.
That's what I was gonna ask,
Finance.
everything in person or
Yeah.
virtual.
Yeah,
And
and that's
virtual?
all tentative. Right now, we'll get all the information out to you. It's looking pretty good
If you
though.
haven't already responded to my email, if you're available, please do, just so I can make sure we have a quorum before I have the Board of Finance post the meeting.
Great. Virtual and in person.
They do both, yeah.
Okay.
They do both.
Until you're
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the football cooperative.
So, last year, you heard there was quite a bit of talk about, our ability or inability to put forward a safe football team that would allow students to really participate at both the JV and varsity level. And, it was the sentiment of the community, the parents and the kids playing football, that they were not ready to consider entering into a larger co-op. As you know, we're already Westbrook, Old Saybrook. This year, so Brendan Saunders is going to present to you about what he's proposing for next football season, and what we experienced this football season, which will, I think, really convince me be the way we have to go for now. And just so you know, football is becoming this kind of an issue.
Yeah.
Almost everywhere. Brendan?
Thank you. And thank you for the kind words before.
You're welcome.
As we're saying, last year, we had an opportunity to possibly co-op with Morgan, as Superintendent said. It was met with a lot of resistance. We had multiple meetings with parents, with students, trying to see what our numbers were gonna look like. Parents and students came up with 48 kids that were going to come out for football. That number ended up being closer to 30 by the end of the year, ended up being 27. We graduated 11 seniors from that group. So we're looking at about 17 kids. The feeder program in Old Saybrook has been devastated after COVID. We used to support 3 youth teams. Now we have one that is made up of many towns. So our numbers coming up are very, very low. I'm sorry, I'm not going off the slides here. Trent, you can go to that one. So with that, we've seen reduced JV opportunities. Last year, we actually did form a co-op with Morgan, just at the JV level. And that worked out very well. If you don't have a JV program for football, it's almost impossible to be successful. There's, especially now where we don't have the youth and the feeder programs that we used to. Football is a very difficult sport to step in as a high school freshman and pick it up. There's a lot of different positions, there's a lot of things to learn. So to start off as a ninth grader is very difficult. So this would allow us, with more numbers, would allow us to have a full JV program. And also we haven't been competitive. In 3 years, we haven't won a game, unfortunately. John Woodsack was one of our football seniors. You know, we have great kids that are out there. You know, football is the first sport to go out in the summer when it's 100 degrees in August, and the last one to come in Thanksgiving when, you know, everyone's already inside nice and warm. So these kids really, really work, and to not have them see any success over 3 years is really difficult. It's sad. It really is. We've never been a football powerhouse, but we've always had enough kids to support a team. And unfortunately now I think we're just getting to the point where we don't have enough kids to support a team to really do it safely, and be competitive. Trent, if you want to move on. So some of the benefits, obviously, an enhanced athletic experience, a safer athletic experience. When, you know, if we try to field a team next year with, let's say we have 17 and the numbers go up to 25, I think a safe number for football is closer to 40, where you're having freshmen not competing against seniors, you know, just developmentally wise. For safety reasons, you're going to see kids not playing out of position where, you know, we might have a 140-pound offensive tackle going against a 260-pound defensive tackle, which we saw a few times this year, unfortunately. So obviously, just the overall experience would be much better. It would increase a sense of pride with the community. It'd be sustainable. We end up looking at football numbers every year. You know, what is it going to look like this year? Creating a co-op would make a much more sustainable thing where we're not having to look at, hey, are we going to have a program? If you want to move on. So 12 of the 17 PQAT schools, and this goes back to what the superintendent was saying, 12 of the 17 PQAT schools are co-ops at this time. We are a co-op with Westbrook. We have been since 1988. Typically, the numbers have always been Saybrook heavy. There have been years where Westbrook has been, you know, a much bigger contributor. This year, they only had four athletes. Next year, they're only anticipating 1. So the participation from Westbrook is obviously much, much lower. And again, when we're talking about a roster size that's this small, there's really no way to compete. It would be safer. Obviously, as a program improves, hopefully we see numbers improve. Obviously, if you don't win a game for a few years, you know, people are gonna think, well, do I really want to go out and put in all the work it takes to be on a football team? If the opportunity to be successful isn't there. Please. So again, this is just the number of schools that do co-op. HK, Morgan, North Branford are the only standalone schools. HK is obviously a regional school, so it's almost automatically a co-op. North Branford is now working with, I believe, North Haven at the JV level, so they're probably going to be moving to a co-op at some point soon. And obviously Morgan, numbers have declined. That's obviously why they are entertaining this co-op with us. Okay, please. So these are the anticipated numbers for next year. Morgan has about 23, and again, these are anticipated. We're at about 17, and Western's about 1. So again, I said that safe number for football, I think, is about 40. This puts us right at the lower end of where we'd like to be. Football team of 50, where again, you see a completely separated JV and varsity program would be ideal. If this was to go through, Morgan would be the host school because they have more players. That's typically the relationship we've always had with Westbrook. We almost always had more players. We were the host school. The one really nice thing about this, we have a really open relationship with all of the Morgan staff, with all the Morgan coaches. They are all for this. Our coaching staff is all for this. There is no, well, where's this going to be? Who's going to be this? Who's going to be that? Our coach has already said, you know, they've had an established coach there for, I think, I believe 5 years now. They've actually were friends before Coach Hillier came to Saybrook. He said, I have no problem going over there and being a coordinator and not being a head coach anymore. So it's set up very well right now. I'm kind of jumping ahead of some slides here. So again, we've been in a co-op since 1988. We want to maintain, I don't think we can support football in Old Saybrook without this. We want to maintain a team, even if we're not the old school. Home games will be at Valley, I'm already jumping ahead of that. At Morgan, but they have already agreed that, you know, in the first season, we'll have 1 and then possibly 2. There's only 5 home games in the football season. So we would see at least a minimum of 1 game played at Old Saybrook, possibly more. Obviously, we have a beautiful field, we have lights. Football looks great at night.
So it's just, that's a good plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other really big benefits too is they play on grass, we play on turf. So if we're going to play a turf team, you know, hey, let's have practice at Saybrook for 4 days.
Right.
If there's a washout of their field, hey, let's come play at Saybrook. You know, when the fields in November are pretty beat up, ours looks just like it did in August, which is a great thing. So they love the idea of having that as well. So, you know, we're not gonna see football disappear from Saybrook. We will definitely keep it alive. Okay. So, a couple challenges, and again, some of this is already started, because obviously once parents catch wind of everything, they want to get ahead of it. Our booster club, Town Club have already started talking with their booster club. They're already, you know, working out ideas if this goes through. Some of the logistics, we would have to get CIAC and PQAT approval, but with our current numbers, I don't see that being a problem. I've talked to all the athletic directors in the PQAT. No one has any issue with the potential co-op. Uniforms, again, these are all things, logistics that can be worked out once it is approved. We are both actually up for new football uniforms in next year's budget, the following year's budget. So if we play as the Old Saybrook, Westbrook, Morgan Huskies for a year in their uniforms, again, it makes football survive. And then we can worry about uniforms, you know, down the road. We have coaches set up that are both interested. Transportation, we would basically just, the model where Westbrook came here every day after school, we would go to Morgan every day after school. We've been in a co-op for so long that this is one thing we really know is how to run a football co-op. We just go from the larger school now to the smaller school. The cost would be the same as the cost model we've always used with Westbrook. We take, Julie and I sit down at the end of every year we take the total cost of the football program, transportation, officials, uniforms, whatever the cost might be, and we just divide it by the number of players. So, you know, if Saybrook had 25 and Westbrook had 5, you know, we would pay that percentage and Westbrook would pay the other. This would be the same setup. So now if we have 40 kids and 25 are from Morgan, 15 are from Saybrook, 5 are from Westbrook, the pot would just be divvied up by the numbers. So the cost would be identical, basically to what we pay per year. Is that the last one, Ken? So obviously we need to consider what's best for all student athletes and the best way to preserve football at each school. And if we don't do this, football will not survive here for another season, unfortunately. And I hate to say that I played football here a long, long time ago. I coached football here a long time ago. I love football. I'm a football guy. This pains me, but if it keeps Saybrook kids playing football, I am all for it.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah.
Before we get into questions, I'm actually looking for a motion. Here.
Well, I was just gonna say, I move that we, support the co-op. I don't know if I need formal terminology, but I move that we adopt a co-op for the football program.
Second.
Second, any discussion, questions?
Great questions. I'm not a sports person, but tell me, you said had some challenges about transportation. Do normally kids, Saybrook Public Schools provides transportation for kids to go over?
So Westbrook provided transportation for their kids to come here. We would provide transportation for kids to go there.
Okay, so nobody drives themselves.
You can drive yourself to a practice, you can't drive yourself to a game.
Okay.
Leah,
What would the name be of the new football team?
So I like MSW, or, you know, we were always OSW. I think
Yeah.
MSW kind of flows and it goes, you know, in the order of schools, largest to
Then
smallest.
they're the host.
Yeah.
But are we the Huskies or the
That-
Rams or the?
That's another thing we're looking to work out. Saybrook Westbrook was always the OSW Rams. And talking with the coaches and Megan Sears, their athletic director, they have no problem down the road if we just become one brand.
Yeah.
I really like Seahawks myself. And Boston scene, so that is something that, again, one of the logistics.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such an important piece of school
Yeah.
pride.
Oh, absolutely.
That it would have to be almost something that is not the Huskies
Not us.
or the Rams. We
Yeah.
need to have one that is
No,
just
I
for
couldn't
Husky,
agree more.
you know?
Like Valley and Old Lyme have done a co-op now for a few years. They were the Warriors and the Wildcats, and they became the Warcats, which was pretty cool.
That's cool.
That was
Cute,
very cool. I don't know
Yeah.
where you can combine a Ram and a Husky, but.
I do. I'm not very familiar with that school, but I kind of Google Earth it and you don't really, from what I saw, don't have the greatest of facilities.
We're huge.
They have,
The fields don't look great.
so they are beautiful new practice field right behind the school. And then they play offsite at Peters Complex, which is.
Indian, is that Indian River?
Indian River.
Yeah, you might have been looking at.
Indian River is, if you pulled out of Morgan High School and took a right, Indian River is the one
Yeah,
set up on a hill.
yeah.
And Peters Complex is if,
It's like near.
I think Ironworks Road.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If you got off the exit. you
Not
took a
far
right.
from Elliott, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Not far from
I
Elliott.
guess the second part of my statement is more of, we do have a beautiful facility. We have spent a ton of money. We have improved it significantly since we started. To me, one game doesn't feel very cooperative. So I would like to see a minimum of 2.
So, and again, Valley, and again, I'll go back to just other co-ops in the area. Valley and Old Lyme play one game a year at Old Lyme. We had never actually played a football game in Westbrook until this year. We played a JV game there. It was pretty cool. And, 30 years, we never had a game there. We got a game there. I want to just get this off the ground
Right. Worry about the
before I
logistics later.
become too concerned about who plays where. Again, we've already discussed a minimum of 1, hopefully 2. And again, they are the host school, so,
Right.
we need them more than they need us
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I went to the Thanksgiving game at Morgan and their facility is beautiful. You know, they'll have the lights, the whole 9 yards, and it's huge. Just to get there, it's a complex, actually. And you know, I hear you, what you're saying is point well taken. But right now, we want to keep football afloat. We kind of have to accept and see how we can manage it. Maybe we could have more soccer games under the lights or something, you know, to use the.
Well, the other thing too with our fall schedule, we didn't actually turn the lights on until maybe 2 weeks before we started.
Right.
So it was a very fun night with our little kids out there.
Right.
But we had to shift on the fly to move games tonight. So, you know, these schedules were established months and months before. So we said we'd go to 3 to 4 games per team, just to start, because again, we didn't know. And then we ended up playing all of our playoff games at night. We played all of our home football games on Saturdays and 3 of which were night games.
So moving forward, we have plenty of time for next season's sports to plan ahead.
Yes.
Perfect.
Absolutely. And this co-op is actually holding up the Pequot football schedule, which would have been out probably right around January 1st. So they're actually helping us out by holding off.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing.
Yes, they have Clinton and Westbrook approved yet.
Yes. Clinton, no, Westbrook, yes.
Clinton, no.
Clinton is going to the board. I think it's their, I'm not sure what the date is, but their next board meeting. But everyone I talked to over there seems
Yeah,
very
I did
supportive.
speak with the superintendent.
Great. And I guess I have just one more question. How is it going to be, is it going to be treated, once you're the co-op, you're one team?
Yep.
Whether they're the host team or not, the best players are going to be the ones that get to play. So
Absolutely.
it doesn't mean that just
No, it's not.
Morgan and Westbrook. So they try out for positions and it didn't, once you're on a team, it doesn't matter what town you're from.
No.
Perfect. That's fair and, you know, equitable.
And it's works out really well too, that we would be sending a coach are already on staff over. So it's not like we're just sending our kids with no adults
Excellent.
coming along.
Great, thanks, Brendan. There's no other questions. I'm gonna call for a vote to approve the motion to approve football cooperative from Full Saybrook, Westbrook, and Clinton as proposed. All those in favor?
I.
Aye.
Alan likes.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so moved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item is the softball cooperative.
So everywhere I just said football, insert ball.
Motion to accept.
So our softball numbers have been in decline for years, unfortunately. We haven't had a JV program in the past 3 years. This is due to a number of factors. We are a huge, obviously, track community. Silver Gloves, outdoor track. We have a huge team. We've always had a huge team. We've seen more kids migrating over to track. Also, lacrosse has taken over spring sports. It's really hurt softball and baseball programs. If you look at the feeder teams, there's more 6 lacrosse teams than there are Little League. I mean, Little League's been a staple of athletics forever. So we see so many kids switching over to other spring sports. Probably supposed to be reading off this start. So we Westbrook last year had a co-op with Portland. So if you do this geography on that one, it didn't work very well. They didn't practice together. They met at games. Literally 2 buses would come together and they would play games. Yeah, it was not a good, but again, it was that or no something. And so it was what they needed to do for a year. Portland's numbers have since gone up. Westbrook's numbers have since stayed right about where they were. So when this became, as soon as the Portland Westbrook co-op was resolved, they immediately put in a call over there to see what they wanted to do. They're basically in the same boat as us. We're both looking at about 9 players. So again, it's not the safety factor of football, but this is just a numbers factor of people on the field, people at practice. So in order to sustain a softball program again, and unfortunately, I hate to say this, we're going to be seeing more of this. And we're lucky that we actually have a partner in Westbrook that is so geographically close and whose numbers, you know, are significantly lower than ours. So we're gonna end up having a lot of partnerships as we have in the past, and they're going to increase. So it's a very nice, I don't want to say problem to have, but solution to a problem that we're going to see more and more of. So again, connected to the strategic plan, obviously, equity, high quality instruction and safe and supportive environment relate to all sports. Especially the high quality instruction. With our softball program last year, we had 1 coach and 11 players. Very difficult to run a practice with 11 players when you're used to having, 20 or 25 on a softball or baseball team. Hopefully this would allow us enough, and we're going to be teetering right around the number for a full JV program. If we can't run a full JV program, we can at least run modified JV programs. A lot of times we'll put 3 schools together and field 2 teams just so these kids get some game experience. And again, that goes back to a safety perspective too, where we don't necessarily want to see kids that come in. We had 2 freshman starters last year. Obviously, we see kids that excel their freshman year in athletics, but typically it's going to be the older kids. Some of these kids get forced into positions that they're not ready to play. And at a level they're not ready to play at, and it can be overwhelming. But unfortunately, when there's no other option, sometimes they do get pushed through. Trent, please. So a new coaching staff will help identify student athletes areas of strength in areas that require improvement. Central call will provide team members an opportunity to be part of something to be proud and have a greater chance of success. We only won 1 game last year, and it was against Westbrook. We actually split with Westbrook. So we were their lone victory, and we were their lone victory. So being a team of greater numbers that can compete in the Shoreline Conference will help to increase student athlete confidence and benefit their overall emotional well-being. Obviously, everyone plays or is involved in athletics wants to win. That's, the love of the game is great. Playing for the camaraderie with your friends, but everyone wants to win. Let's be honest. All those other things are huge points, but like the football program, if you don't succeed, if you don't have any success, it's very difficult to stick with. So again, Trent, please. So totals, you can see the numbers here. They're projected to have 10, we're projected to have 9. I broke down the cost for this one, and I didn't break down the cost of the football one, just because the cost structure for football is not going to change. The cost structure for softball will, and it would be the same as the football structure. We'll take the total of the season and we'll divide it by the number of players from each school. Logistics again are not, where who's going to play where. Obviously, we haven't approved it yet. They technically have more students than we do at this point. I think softball is a little bit easier of a sport to jump back and forth, if that makes sense. Whereas football, there's a lot of equipment involved on a day-to-day basis. With this co-op, it would be easier to say, hey, we're gonna practice at Westbrook for 2 weeks. Hey, we're gonna practice at Sabre for 2 weeks. We could almost divide the games in half. There's more home games. We're between 18 and 20 games per season. And it's also a little easier to move a softball game just because of staffing. A football game requires 6 officials, requires, a concession stand, a press box, somebody in the parking lot, a team doctor, an EMT. It's a lot of work to move a football game. Softball is 2 officials, and some catchers here and back. So it's there's a little more to it than that, but it's a lot easier to switch locations than it is for something like football. So close proximity to Westbrook obviously makes it pretty easy. Many girls have played together in the off season. Old Sabre has helped the co-op with Westbrook again for football for over 30 years. And again, as I said before, with declining numbers, we are probably going to see more of this, and partnerships with Westbrook are probably going to be the way we go. And again, the logistics are all things we can work out down the road. And again, they're very similar to Morgan. Their administration, their athletic director are very wide open to any ideas, and no one is saying, we're the big brother here, and you're just coming to help out. And everyone is very supportive, very open to any positive ideas.
Great, thank you, Brendan. I am looking for a motion. Karen,
A motion to approve the softball cooperative between Old Saybrook and Westbrook as proposed.
second, okay, discussion? Seeing there's no discussion, I'm gonna call for a vote to approve the softball cooperative between Old Saybrook and Westbrook as proposed. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
His hand went up during.
I know.
Delay.
Abstentions. So moved, thank you.
Thank you. A follow-up question after everything's been voted on here. And my question would be, I understand that declining numbers and other avenues such as the ticks and other sports that people are interested in are contributing to this. Are there any other sports on the horizon that you might think that we might need to consider?
Pickleball.
Pickleball, we're gonna have.
Pickleball is taking
Do we
over.
have that? Oh, okay.
We do not have it, but whether it starts out as a club, obviously there's not an official CIAC pickleball team,
Mhm.
but pickleball is taking over the nation.
Yes.
So I would like to get ahead of it and see what we can do. Obviously, the process for starting a team always starts with a club and a JV. I don't know if it's gonna get to a level where we see, competitive CIAC
Varsity,
pickleball,
derby.
but I would love to get a club started. We've got some middle school enthusiasts. We have courts in town now, so.
We
pickleball is-
We've been lined our new court with
Yeah.
pickleball. The gym is lined for pickleball.
Nice.
It's a unit that they do in gym class.
Nice.
Okay, our last item on the agenda is an update on the sound system. High school.
Very quickly. So there were questions at the last meeting about the sound system and why it was hard to hear people both on field and also during the fall play. And I misspoke. I could have sworn I saw kids with mics on. They didn't have mics on, and that apparently is intentional and part of the program. That they require the kids to really learn it. They see that as their classroom and they want the kids to really learn how to project. So apparently the fall drama, they never mic. Spring musical, they always mic. I'm gonna ask Julia to talk about some of the other things that we learned. Very interesting things that we learned.
Right, so they did put some microphones on stage because I guess even with trying to get the kids to project their voices,
Yeah.
they weren't quite loud enough. So then parents thought that they should be able to hear them through the microphone. It almost made it worse.
Yeah.
So that's what happened with the fall play.
I think it was also very difficult because they were trying to do French accents and Russian accents and, you needed
The mustache.
coat and a tie.
They took it off and threw it. It was adorable.
Coaches and dialecticians and, we're not there.
So thank you for at least bringing these up. And usually if it's a problem, I hear about it. So I was a little surprised that night. And then when I went and researched the different situations, I found out, okay, now I know why I didn't hear about them. So the National Honor Society, again, we have a lot of new people that haven't been involved with a lot of these things in the past. And so the mic was cutting in and out. And so the next day they went to Jeremy Taylor and said, the heck, the mics didn't work. And so he went in with the individual and they didn't have the appropriate switches turned on. They just didn't know how to use them. Now, this is sort of the case of all these things I'm going to talk about. We had students in the past who were very into this and they played a role in all of the sound and lighting and like sports, that's all diminishing. There's like nobody coming up through the ranks. So that's what happened for that night at National Honor Society. The Veterans Day presentation over here, our custodians go over with the speakers and set them out. And as Jeremy said it in a very polite way, we need to train them a little bit better. Like they're not sound people, they're not lighting people. They just brought the equipment over, plugged it in and said, here you go. But it was the way it was positioned was not great. And then finally, the press box. So we love volunteers and we appreciate everything that they do. But when they adjust our equipment, which is what happened the night of the presentation for the lights, they were playing music, if you remember in the
Yeah.
beginning, and there was a volunteer in there who thought he could change a bunch of things, and I thought Brendan and I were gonna die, because we knew nothing was projecting the way it should have, and we had tested it all before the meeting that night, or the presentation that night. So these are sort of human error. The problem that we have is we don't have a lighting or sound person, you know, we don't have somebody designated to do that. I know, Brendan, you've got the settings now, and I think you taped them and you've got them kind of set. You know, so we're trying to make those provisions where we can, but it wasn't really malfunction of equipment, it was sort of human malfunction in most cases, so.
Good to know.
Appreciate the clarity. Yeah, but thank you for letting me know, because, you know, we're gonna try and see if we can't get, staff members, kids, whomever's interested, especially through like drama. Usually we have a student or two that really takes, you know, loves to do the scenery or loves to do the sound.
Right.
And so we're gonna have to try to really cultivate that in the future. So,
Good question.
My question is not a micromanaging question, but so when I appreciate, you know, the disclosure. So for instance, when you were saying that for particular presentations, drama, you know, that they were teaching the students how to project, but I'm not sure that's the right platform, because when you have a community coming and sitting, you know, you were saying they're not like.
the drama has been, from time immemorial, has
Right.
always been unmiked.
Right, but people are saying that people are saying they can't hear.
Well,
I'm not saying that.
I hear
I'm not
you.
micromanaging, I'm just saying that when the community comes to see something, you have older people, they can't, you know, doesn't seem to me, and I may be just one person, but when the community is there, it needs to be done in a way that people can receive the information and enjoy it, as opposed to kind of going, no, I just didn't get it. I mean, it's like the veterans. They just didn't get it because the kids aren't expected to, hold on, they got taught. So
I
I'm
know
just saying,
they were
they should
working
have a
with.
different venue for students to practice.
Well, I really, I commend the teachers who treat that as their classroom setting. I understand that we're also doing public relations,
yeah.
but even our bands do that same thing. They'll have the kids try new music for a concert, or they'll have a student stand up and direct. And so those are opportunities where if they really are doing an assessment of how well the kids are doing at that point, which in the arts you can't do outside of performance, right?
I just meant the band, you wouldn't really, unless somebody's really flat, you wouldn't really know if they made a mistake.
Well,
But I'm just saying, in this case, people are kind of like, okay, and then they can't hear. So I'm just.
I also think, you know, again, new staff member, like everybody's coming along kind of at the same time. I think that it was a great lesson. The voice projection obviously needs to be worked on. But like I said, it has not ever been a part of the drama play. It's the musical that they're mic'd, but drama, that's part of learning the drama piece. So, you know, it's a little bit of a delicate balance.
Great. Thank you. Before we adjourn tonight, there's some reminders at the bottom of your agenda. That's what we can hear on the Board of Finance meeting.
Yeah, the Board of Finance meeting, again, tentatively set for us for the 24th at 5:30.
Okay.
If you can make it, please just email me, because I'm just waiting to email the Board of Finance, let them know we do have a quorum, so they can listen to the meeting as theirs. And
Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn, please.
Make motion.
Second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.